is only a transition to a different sphere of consciousness. Carol Ann is not like those she's with. She is a living presence in their spiritual earthbound plane.
Hello, and welcome to episode 49 of the Talking to the Dead podcast. This week, I'm recording the podcast on a Friday, which again is quite unusual for me. Main reason is because I was traveling on Wednesday, and Thursday was a public holiday here in Germany. It's the celebration for the falling of the Berlin Wall and the reunification of Germany. So here we are, Friday, and this week we will follow a similar theme to the last couple of weeks, where, first of all, I just wanted to give you some information about the things that I've read about and things I've noticed in the news about world events that seem to indicate the oncoming, whatever you want to call it, whether it's a catastrophe, a calamity, end of the world, whatever you want to call it. I'm not going to be too negative about it, but yes, I think it's important to talk about those things. At the second part of the podcast, I just want to talk to you about a couple of more things that various listeners have said to me, and also I understand that there's a possibility that I could channel the entity that was the father of another listener, Mark, and he has a couple of questions he has for his father. So that's what we're going to do today. So without any further ado, I just thought I'd let you know all the various things that I've seen. And most definitely, again, the weather has been a major factor. There have been tremendous amounts of floods, and again, I'm hearing all these words being used to describe the floods as being biblical, once in a lifetime. That is unusual. It's not unusual that people have floods or fires or volcanoes or tropical storms, but it's just the use of the language that I'm finding particularly interesting. So yes, there are volcanoes in Ecuador, Japan, there are tropical cyclones, many wildfires in the United States at the moment, also in Queensland, in Australia. There are severe frosts, again, sort of unbelievable frosts in Quebec and Canada. Kansas has wildfires. There are many floods in the southeastern United States. And I would imagine that most people listening to this are used to hearing about these things. But again, I would just be interested in knowing, is there an uptick in that? And what do these things indicate? Of particular note this week was Hurricane Helene. And I believe I read a report that its devastation and the death toll caused by the hurricane is the worst since Hurricane Katrina. And I think in the time that Hurricane Katrina came, that was just about the worst hurricane as well. So again, suddenly we're getting the worst hurricanes all over again. Earlier in the week, there was a lot of talk, of course, about what's going on in the Middle East, and we've talked about that quite a lot in these podcasts. But I think most interesting to me was the speed at which the world seems to be getting plunged into World War III is happening, has caught my attention. At the beginning of the week, people were talking about the Israeli incursion into Lebanon and the bombing of the border towns. And within a few days, that has suddenly turned into a mass assassinations of terrorists by the Israelis, and also now a huge attack by Iran on Israeli cities, but not just border cities or symbolic attacks, but these are suddenly ballistic missile attacks crossing across the Middle East there within a few minutes, I believe, and hitting major cities such as Jerusalem and Tel Aviv. And the news is just a buzz with talks of what does this mean. But nearly everywhere you go, you see a headline saying Iran warns us not to intervene with what's going on between Israel. And by us, I presume they mean the West, and the United States and Europe, because of mounting fears of World War III. These huge tensions that are happening out there are also, if you pick up on some of the religious websites and religious news out there, these events seem to be again confirming to those who are Christian or of a religious persuasion that this is more than just a skirmish. This is, if you like, one of the major signals that shows the end of times is coming. And I think I've read a lot of Christian websites as well that seem to indicate that it was prophesied that the Middle East war would be the start of the end of the world. And I'm only talking like this because, as you know, if you listened to my podcast a few weeks back, this is what was coming through to me, people like Daniel. And I'm just now very interested in making sure that I keep an eye on things and to see what is shaping up. I think it is very worrying, and I don't think it's anything you can take lightly. I have noticed how sort of lightly, actually, the media seems to take all of this, and they're saying, oh, well, it's not quite as bad as what happened during the Cuban Missile Crisis in the 60s. But it is actually very similar, with Putin again ramping up his rhetoric about pushing the nuclear button, and various other states talking of nuclear things. And even, I think, as recently as yesterday, there was talk that in retaliation for the bombing of Israel by Iran, Israel may well be planning to attack the nuclear facilities in Iran, which would, of course, cause, I presume, a sort of a Chernobyl-like mass infection of the whole region with a nuclear fallout of some description, which would be terrifying for all the millions of people living there and the displaced people, let alone the potential for anything worse, such as an explosion that could cause a dirty bomb effect, or even hitting a developed nuclear weapon that we don't know about. So all of this is incredibly worrying, what's going on. And it does seem, again, to be leading to what Martin and others said to me, that we are about to, I think, see something on a nuclear level that we've not seen since the bombings in Japan in 1945. It's no surprise to me that my attention has been drawn to videos on YouTube about Chernobyl and what it looks like now. And I did actually watch or skim through a video, and somebody's put an amazing thing. It's very long. It's about 6 or 7 hours, but I only watched a bit of it. And it shows this guy with his camera in very high definition wandering around Chernobyl as it is now, and it's just so eerie. And I must say the effect it had on me was very sobering. If you look at the place now, it's a deserted city. Nature has taken over. It looks peaceful and tranquil, and you hear bird song, misty lakes and wonderful vistas. It looks absolutely beautiful. But of course, you know that just under the soil is a level of radioactivity that would kill a normal man very, very quickly. The actual site of Chernobyl has been completely covered with a special dome, but most of the buildings remain in a very dilapidated state, again, extremely radioactive in many cases. The town itself is just falling to pieces. It's degrading. You can see the buildings are falling to pieces. Animals and plants have taken over. But that's what happens, is that a whole town or city just disappears, and it gets returned to nature and can never be lived in again, because I believe the half-life of the radiation there is many, many hundreds of years. So I've been drawn to that, and I really hope that, somebody can see some sense and doesn't let this happen again. I noted that there were tremendous floods in the United Kingdom. There have been floods in Nepal. And that sort of caught my attention too, because I always think of Nepal as being an extremely spiritual place. And I'm sure there have been a lot of things that have been said by Buddhists about the nature of oncoming floods and what it would mean. Droughts in Algeria, Spain, Morocco, Tunisia, Congo, Malawi, Mozambique, and other places, which is inevitable to cause starvation and mass hunger, and again, sort of the plague-like things that seem to have been predicted, tropical cyclones. And on top of all of that, Russia is also raising its defense expenditure to the highest level ever. Its rhetoric is getting more and more dangerous. There are more and more meetings at very high levels, some that are in the press, and I'm sure some that are not, where NATO and various other people are meeting with the President of the United States to discuss the growing tensions in Russia because of the potential for the use of Western-made missiles and supplied missiles by the state of Ukraine that could potentially hit targets inside Russia. And that will then be seen by Russia as an act of war by the West and NATO. And there is talk again, it happened this week, that the Russian military and the more hawkish elements of the Russian establishment are pressurizing Putin to rewrite his nuclear doctrine, which is, if you like, his policy that shows when or if he will use nuclear weapons. And at the moment, that only will happen if the state of Russia is considered to be under imminent threat of destruction. I think they want him to adjust it down a notch or so, that nuclear weapons could be used if even other weapons, non-nuclear weapons, are fired at Russians and Russian cities and the infrastructure. And if that happened, which seems very likely if we're going to supply Ukraine with such weapons, you just don't know what's going to happen. And maybe this is what's going to happen, is that Putin will let off a nuclear weapon, maybe a small tactical one. Maybe he'll just destroy a city in Ukraine that will certainly show the world his capability. It's a question of what will happen then, apart from, of course, the devastating effect it's going to have on everyone. It's kind of a Nagasaki or Hiroshima moment that he probably feels would cause the West to suddenly wake up and decide to, leave him alone, because do we really wish to cross over into a worldwide nuclear conflict? There is talk as well this week of growing tension because Russia is becoming more friendly with North Korea, Iran, and China. And there seems to be a sort of an axis of cooperation there. They're calling it the axis of anger, that these states may join together in order to align themselves to one side of a war against the rest of us living in the West. So that's all quite new in the media and also very worrying. It's worrying too because Iran has one of the biggest armies in the world, I understand, although we can sit here and probably fool ourselves into a false sense of security by thinking that perhaps they're ineffective, or as we've been taught in the West to see many of these Arab nations as being almost like clowns, unable to to organize a proper attack, and they're all squabbling amongst each other. And you see all this stuff, and they treat many people in these Arab states as if they're children who have no idea what they're doing. And I think that's an extremely dangerous position to take, because if Iran really does decide to get nasty, there will be a huge attack from Iran on Israel and maybe anyone else who joins in. And they have the capability, for all we know, to massively destroy areas of Israel and take out the fleet of the United States that's hovering in the sea opposite. I don't know what will happen then, but I think we're talking about now. If you listen to what Netanyahu is saying and his colleagues, that they want to actually move in and attack Iran, because Iran, they say, is really who's behind Hezbollah and Hamas and the Houthis, and they want to take out the big player who's using these terrorist groups just as a proxy for themselves. Again, extremely worrying. You could argue, of course, to a certain extent, America is using Israel as a proxy for itself. And nobody, for the right reasons, has been really wanting to come out straight away and say, we're at war with you. But it looks like it's happening. So that's what's happened in the last week. And I will keep watching. The next thing that's happened this week, which I think is extremely fascinating, is, as you know, in previous episodes, it's been revealed to me by Titan and Neil Peart and all the other people who've come in about music, that it's completely true that music is something that can be created by people, by musicians, composers, but more often than not, it's something that comes from a higher source. And I think in an episode where Neil was taking me around, he actually showed me, as I remember, a particular hall where all the music and all the art and all the culture, if you like, that has ever been and ever will be created exists and can be accessed by people who are particularly sensitive to music, either through sleep or astral projection or whatever it might be. And I'm very, very drawn, particularly because I read about Paul McCartney saying that I think one of the songs, I think it was Yesterday, he doesn't know how it happened, but he just woke up in the morning with this song fully formed in his head. And I'm so intrigued by it that I actually wrote to a question and answer session that was in the Guardian newspaper. And David Gilmour, the guitarist of Pink Floyd, who is at the moment in the middle of a tour for his new solo album, was doing a question and answer. And I thought I just have to ask him the question as well, because I'm just so fascinated as to whether he believes that music is somehow channeled through to us. So in this question and answer, I wrote to David Gilmour and I said to him, do you believe that music is a product of the mind alone, or is there an element of inspiration that is somehow received directly from a higher consciousness? And he's replied, I am an atheist, so I hate to say it out loud, but there are times when it feels like music is channeling itself when I'm writing. It doesn't always feel like it's something I've done. It's somehow just come through me. Now, I didn't expect David Gilmour to come straight out and answer my question like that, especially since he claims that he's an atheist. But my goodness, that isn't a complete, really acceptance that, yes, much music comes straight through you from somewhere else. And probably an awful lot of the work that came through in his great band Pink Floyd, as well as his solo work, has been stuff that he has somehow tapped into. And that's just him as a member of a 4-member band. So I was really, really interested to hear that. So now in the last part of the podcast this week, back to Talking to the Dead, which is why I know most of you are here. And again, I do apologize to those of you who somehow feel my podcast is some political rant. I certainly don't intend it to be that. And hopefully I've explained why I am talking about world events at the moment, because I really do believe, and all the evidence that I'm reading at the moment indicates, that it's all connected. there is something happening. It's what's happening with the UAPs, and exactly what are they? It is the impending signs that show that something is very destabilized in the world, and the connection between all of that and our own psychic consciousness, and the fact that I felt a few weeks ago very under psychic attack, and somebody was trying to get through to me and push me to do what I'm now doing. And I am doing it because I feel very drawn to it. I will stop talking about it, hopefully, if everything goes away. But until that happens, I really feel that this is what I need to be doing. So now I will quickly see if I can ask Titan to come through. A lot has happened this week. I'll tell you about that in a minute. So give me a minute, which is a few minutes for me, but it'll be just instantaneous for you as usual. Okay. Now, I definitely can feel that Titan is here. She's actually just mentioning to me again that she hasn't really been around that much, but she is always there, even though it's not something that is coming to me so directly from her at the moment. But she wants to reassure me that she is there and is very happy to keep guiding me. She mentions that we all have this. I mean, we all have guardian angels around us, and we can all contact them. And I think that has also come through to me through another correspondent who has told me about her experiences. A lady who doesn't particularly feel she's psychic in herself, but has had an awful lot of experiences that would indicate something is going on. And I've been trying to persuade her that she should try to develop her powers a little bit, and the various avenues that she has to be able to do that. And I'm really hoping that something really will happen for her, because I think it's important that we all try to contact things if we can, because it's very rewarding, I'm sure, as well as very reassuring. But firstly, Titan, if I could perhaps ask you about Linda's question to me. Now, Linda, not for the first time, and she's not the only one, has always felt that perhaps I'm a little unfair towards mediums. And particularly in my case, I think it must be because I don't like the idea of people who do things similar to what I do, charging people for it. Because I feel if you have a gift and you have an ability, you should be able to share that. And I've been corrected by people, and I'm sure it's right, that if you do have expenses and it's your main source of income, then I suppose why not? Obviously, even priests get paid a salary. But I just sort of draw the line at the mediums who seem to charge many thousands. And I mentioned, I think last week, Alison Dubois, who had read, and as I said in my commentary, I'm sure this lady has incredible powers and an amazing ability. And she has this lovely podcast you can listen to where she, obviously free, gives her discussions with people and talks about all sorts of spiritual things, which I think is incredibly good. But I don't understand why it was necessary that she needed to set herself up as some sort of Hollywood-style glamorous lady and who lives in the most, huge kind of reality TV life, and I understand charges many thousands of euros or dollars to people for spiritual advice. I just don't get that. So, Titan, I know you're here. Linda asked me to ask you my view, because definitely down here, I think people have different views to me. What do you think about that? She's saying to me, which I can appreciate. She's saying to me, everyone to his own. She's saying that if anything, it's wrong for me to make a judgment on what other people are doing, because she's actually, I feel she's a bit annoyed actually. She's saying, look, if there's anything that I've shown to you, is that there is no right and wrong. Whatever anybody does is, if you like, subject to all the things that we've discussed in terms of predestination and the purpose of your life. And somebody who is setting themselves up as a medium may or may not have a gift of mediumship, although she's saying, please remember, everyone does. It's a question that not everyone has been able to tap into it or bothered to tap into it, or is super superstitious of that, or as we found before, people can be an atheist and immediately, in a knee-jerk way, will reject anything that would be a potential contradiction to that atheist belief. And she's saying, look, what I'm saying to you is, you cannot judge somebody just because of their behavior on this level, on this level where we're living. In this reality, people have chosen to do things for a particular reason. And she says, I really implore you, she's saying, I implore you, Philip, to understand that there is a lot of good and there is a lot of bad in everyone. And what a medium may be doing, you may consider to be bad, you may consider it to be a rip-off, but she may be helping people in an incredible way, and in her life, she believes that it is necessary for her to be able to have funding to do that. And she's saying to me also, you mustn't compare everyone to yourself. People have different needs, people have different expenses, people live completely different lives, and you can't suddenly say that somebody is doing something and living a life that is so more extravagant than yours, because that is their life, that is their choice. Otherwise, she said, you could be complaining about kings and stars all over the country, all over the world, who are clearly of vastly more materialistic wealth than you. But does that mean that they are all bad people? Yeah, okay, I can certainly accept that. But what about the fact that maybe not the one we're talking about particularly, but what about mediums who are lying and faking it? She said, I've got news for you. She says that even the ones who potentially know that they're faking it, more often than not, they are actually not faking it, because they are receiving information that is taking a huge amount of their creativity to compose. And a portion of it may well be in their own imagination, but you can be sure that the various spirits who come through, to a certain extent, are making themselves known. But maybe not, she says, at the moment that psychic person believes that it is being made known. The effect it'll have on the listener is also very important, and you mustn't discount that. She says to me, look at it like a drug that some people would consider to be an effective drug against an illness, a legitimate pharmaceutical, or others may consider it to be placebo and completely useless, and is just fooling you into thinking that it's doing you any harm, such as homeopathy, where people feel that it is fake. If you're in the medical business, if you're a doctor, many people would consider it to be no better than placebo. But other people have an incredible benefit from it and believe it's as good as anything that modern medicine has created. In that respect, you must see all psychic contact as that, because the mention of something psychic to another person will open their minds up, and their inner self will be able to communicate in a way that they perhaps weren't able to communicate before. It's like a key, she said, that's opened their door, and their door will enable them to make contact with the people, the spirits, and the entities that they feel comfortable being in contact with. So it's not all bad. she's saying that, yes, it's easy to judge, and it's easy to say that people shouldn't be able to make a living, or making what you consider to be a vast, inappropriate living out of doing this. But equally, she's saying people are willing to pay for that, and therefore it's only right. If people are willing to pay for it and feel that they receive benefit, then who am I to say that it is wrong to do it? And she said, you should keep your unpleasant opinions to yourself, she says. All right, okay, I think I've been corrected there. Yeah, I'm not that I'm particularly wanting to start taking money myself, Titan. I really, I'm not sure that would help me. I can only say that I think if I thought that I was going to be able to make a lot of money out of this, what would it make of me? What would I be as a person? And she's saying no harm. Absolutely no harm. If people offer you money, people want to pay you for what you do, then do it. But she says she respects the fact that I don't ask. That's fine. Well, I tell you what, Titan, let's settle it there. And I hope Linda, that helped answer your questions. So, Titan, while I've got you here, I want you to help me with my friend Mark. Mark has written to me a few times, and he came out of the blue last week after I did a quick reading for Esther. And again, I'm thrilled that people would trust me with something quite as delicate and quite as emotional as maybe making contact with a dead friend or relative. And it is difficult for me because I'm always so filled with imposter syndrome. I don't know, Titan, where all this comes from. You know that. But I would really like you to help me again this time. I will read you Mark's email to me. And he says, look, he would like to contact his father. Now, his father died a short while ago, and I think obviously it's had, as with any death, a true amount of pain and introspection and thinking. His father passed a few years ago, and he asked me what would he need for feedback in order for me to perhaps help him. And I wrote back, I said, nothing much really. I just asked what would he like to ask his father, and just see it as if, I'm a conduit because he can't speak to him directly anymore at the moment. What would he like me to ask him if I sort of saw him in the street, say? Maybe give me how old he was and when he died and his name, and that was it. And I said, no promises. Stuff may come through or may not come through, and that's really what I feel. And Mark came back to me and he said his name was Frank, but he went by the name Jim. He was 89, and he's asked me to maybe ask him what his world is today, what his views towards passing was in his final months, what memories he has of me when I was younger, and if he has connected with anyone he knew or was related to. And he also said it was quite difficult for him. So that's what it is. Maybe, Titan, you could help me. Do you think that Frank, who also went as Jim, is there, and would he like to say something? Okay, so Titan is politely stepped aside, and he's introducing me to a spirit. I can only presume, Mark, that this is your father. Now, first of all, what comes through to me immediately is a tremendous silence and stillness. It's as if this person really does like to have his peace and quiet. I have the feeling he's telling me that in his life that was very important to him, and sometimes he could be quite rude, and he regrets that a bit. But as a human entity, his particular entity that was this person was quite known sometimes for being a little rude and a bit brusque about wanting peace and quiet. Sometimes he said he shouted a bit sometimes. And he says that his son will definitely, and his other children, will definitely recognize that about him. Okay, so I will assume that I'm talking to Jim. And am I speaking to Jim? And I think most definitely I am. I'm not getting a direct verbal answer here, but I am getting the impression that I've got the right person. And he tells me that he's known that I was going to make some contact, and he's been passing various images through to me in the past few days, and he's going to draw those to my attention first of all because he thinks it's important and it'll help me answer the questions. He's saying, oh my goodness, he says, what a lot of questions. But he said, I'm not surprised. He says, I'm quite used to people asking me lots of questions, but I'm a little bit more, he says, a little bit more circumspect in the way that I answer. He said, in life, he really disliked intensely, very strongly, he says, people who asked silly questions, who hadn't thought through what they were going to ask him before asking the question. And he was sometimes, again, the expression suffering fools gladly. He wasn't a great one for suffering fools gladly, which again could account for the fact that sometimes people were a little nervous about approaching him. But he said he didn't mean any harm by it. He just wanted people to think and to use their intelligence, and not just to put all that onto him as if he was going to be able to answer something with tremendous wisdom, he says, and as if he was the oracle. He said that really annoys him. But he says that he has most definitely been around me, and he's asking me to explain my feeling about him being around me. Okay, well, I will then, if I'll call you Jim. I was actually very scared of you. I remember when I was on a train journey coming back from Nuremberg on Wednesday, I was looking out of the window, and I'm sure the same energy feeling that I'm getting now was there, and that it was you. And trains, and being on a train journey, and sitting there in the train and looking out the window, seemed to be something very familiar to you. And it was a time in a way that I think you enjoyed thinking and coming up with thoughts and ideas. I think you found train journeys particularly interesting. But more than that, I think I was just very scared because I felt you were quite angry sometimes. And I was a bit nervous because you seemed to be a little bit aloof and a little bit somehow I felt you had more knowledge than me, that you were going to somehow put me down, and I had a feeling that maybe you did that with Mark, or maybe with Mark's siblings. And he says, yes, I was well known for that. I perhaps there was a certain amount, he says, of intellectual snobbery, and he did feel that in certain respects he did know things better than other people, and he would sometimes be a bit annoyed, and he feels he's a bit sorry for that, but he said that was just the way that he was. Well, there you go. So tell me, Jim, what is the world like for you at the moment? He says, you know what? He said he didn't quite expect it to be as it is. And he said he's fully aware of everything that I've said and done. He says you just have that ability. And he said that's actually probably what is most intrigued him, is that he's always had a tremendous grasp of wanting to know things. And he's always had a hunger for knowledge and reading and understanding the world. And he was extremely skeptical about religion, although in certain respects he would adhere to it because he felt he had to for whatever reasons. And he said, obviously my kids will know that I had to, in my job, in a way, accept certain things that were perhaps not really something I was sure about. But obviously here I am now, and how am I supposed to cling to some of my old views? I obviously had to change. I had to understand that where I am now is just a tiny, what I was just a tiny proportion of what I am now. And he's reminding me, he says, you spoke to your own father too, Philip, he's saying, and you remember how you felt. Your father was your father, but he says, I'm not the father I was. I am this is a portion of me. This is a tiny portion of me. An infinitesimally small portion of me is the father to those children that I had. But the love and the affection is as strong as the father who left them. But he must emphasize that, like my father, it's very hard for people to understand, if they're still alive, that somehow he's not exclusive as the father that he was. He is obviously the father many, many times, the mother many, many times. He said he's had many different relationships, and simultaneously he is still having those. And he can see all the lives now that he's ever lived or ever will live, this complete inner calm that comes from, there is no stress, he says, in worrying about what will come. Because I know, he says, I know everything that is happening, that will happen, that should happen. And he said that has given him, first of all, this amazing sense of knowledge and peace, and something in a way that he never had really in his life. And he really enjoys that. And he says, that allows me now, he says, to get involved in things that are way beyond my comprehension, which are of much more interest to him now. But he says that if he wants to focus on being the person that he was, his final months, and he says, well, of course, final months are not easy. He's actually crying now, and he's making me brush my eyes, and I feel that there's a lot of crying going on. There seems to be a certain amount of regret, and he feels that yes, I think he just feels that the ending came, and it came quickly, and it came in a certain unexpectedly. Although, yes, he said he was a good old age, but it was awful in the fact that he felt that his mind was going. He's actually saying it's quite similar to my own mother again. And he said, I should have that understanding, that, in your last months of life, when you don't really understand what's happening so much anymore, which he says, please, it is a normal part of life, and you mustn't feel sorry for us. But it is sad for those who are left behind, because you're left with the memories of that person, the human body of that person, but the mind is not there anymore. The Jim that people knew isn't there anymore. And he said that was my final view on my final months. And I think that I have a particular view of assisted suicide, and he said he knows that has been a discussion that's been happening in the world a lot, and he has a view that maybe it was something that is a good idea, rather than suffering or being seen to be suffering, that people should be able to do that. But he says that that's a view that I think he would just mention, and he says it's something that he thought an awful lot about in his life. Okay, Jim. Mark wants to know also what memories you have of him when he was younger. Jim is actually, again, I have a sense that he's trying to it's hard to put into words, but again there's some regret here, that he was rather carried away with his own career and his own adventures in life, and perhaps he didn't spend enough time with his children. And he regrets that too, but that was part of the decisions that he made when he came to this world. And in his way, he said that he wanted to help the most people as much as possible. And that was because of things that had happened to him in other lives, where perhaps he was extremely selfish. And he felt that he was unable to share himself properly with people. So in this life, one of the things he realized he needed to do was to open up his mind as much as he could to as many people as possible. But in that way, he's also realized by doing that, he somehow had to spread himself, he says, too thin. And he neglected sometimes some of the most important events in his children's lives. And he regrets that some of the things that he did as a father when he was younger was not now what he'd probably consider he could have done, and he could have done things better. He said he would just leave it like that. He has tremendous memories of his children when younger. I don't know why he's saying this to me, but he's talking about adoption, and I don't know what to make of that. I think he's indicating that he had either adopted children, or perhaps he had another family. I'm not too sure here. He's not really wanting to go there and discuss it anymore. But that is something that he's mentioning. Okay. Have you had any contact with anyone, Joe, anyone you knew or was related to? He says that, yes, obviously, he said it is funny, but there are a lot of people who I have known through this life, this last life, and all the lives that I've had. And it is true that as soon as you pass on, a number of these people are there, but they're part of you. They're part of your soul consciousness. And once you see them again, it all comes back to your mind instantaneously. You suddenly remember who you have been with them and all the lives that you've shared. And so there are so many people, many people. And there's quite a few people in the distinct group, he says, that I always hang out with. And these people have been with me in many lives. So yes, I am connected to people. And he's mentioning the name Dorothy and Mary, Jonathan and Stephen, Hugh, and Adrian. Those are the names that have come through. He's saying to me, he just wants to mention that he likes chickens and he likes eggs, and he thinks that's something that will tickle people. He also mentions bicycles. He likes bicycles. Don't know what else that means. Lastly, he's coming through again, Mark, and he's actually wanting to apologize to you. He just feels that there were a lot of things that he should have said to you. And he feels that the relationship that he had with you was not always to your liking. Again, he says that he won't dwell on that because he's mentioned that already. And although he loved you deeply, and he loved his children deeply, there was a lot that was left unsaid. And some questions should have been raised, some things should have been discussed. Some things were said that were unpleasant. And perhaps some things were never resolved. But he's saying, please, just don't worry about that. We will get the chance to discuss it again. But just know that there was tremendous love, and there couldn't have been more love. And he is sorry that perhaps it wasn't always shown as well as it could have been. But that doesn't mean it wasn't there. Okay. All right. Well, thank you very much, Jim. I'm sure that was quite hard for you, as well as it is hard for everyone to hear. Very honest. I think extremely honest. I hope that it means something to Mark. I do hope this has helped. As I said before, I never know what's going to happen. I can only tell you the feelings that come through. And in a way, yes, I suppose I could sum it up with a bit of regret. And in that vein, I want to play you all out today with Esther's second recording, which was the Proof of Regret, which she's now redone in a very professional way. So I'll play us out to that. And thank you again, Esther, for bothering to do that. So thank you to everyone for coming by. Thank you, Titan. Thank you, Jim. And I do hope this leaves people in a better state than when they started the podcast. Till next week, goodbye.